Like, look at that. Moisturized. This is a new agent. Health, work-life balance agent.
I just got done with a run. This is all sweat. I love that though. You're like, you look so fresh. I'm like, I'm not fresh at all. Like red bags under my eyes. So I said,
you did something with your beard. Your beard is.
I did cut it on last Friday. Yeah.
You have an upper lip. This is a new thing. I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
This is Top Line.
This episode of Top Line is brought to you by Contract Book. Raise your hand if you love managing contracts. We didn't think so. Contract Book offers a holistic contract management platform equipped to handle agreements of all shapes and sizes. Through automation and centralized management, they unlock the value of your data while creating lovable contracting moments for teams and organizations. Visit contractbook.com to take control of your contracts for good. So let's check in with everybody before we bring on our mystery guest. You're listening to Top Line. I'm Sam Jacobs, CEO of Pavilion, AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath, Asad Zaman, CEO of Sales Talent Agency. Quick pulse check. AJ, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. Guess what, guys?
What?
I got a new computer. I got a new computer.
Dominators 23 exclamation point.
Well, also, I assume that my video, my audio, it's all like perfect right now.
It actually is working better. Yeah. You seem more present.
And the camera looks good. This is like the new MacBook, right? With the 180p camera.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is with a 1080 down here.
1080.
South of the border, we call it 1080.
1080. There you go. Well, I'm on the 4K shit, so I'd forgotten that exists. That was a
okay. He's a street fighting martial artist from Pakistan on 4K.
With a 4K camera. That's what I have.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm doing well. I'm great.
I am also really good. We woke up this morning to a 3% inflation reading in the US. How do you not feel fantastic about that? So I feel good. I think we called that the last inflation reading was the beginning of the end. I think we were right. We have another 6 to 9 months of tricky shit ahead of us, but things are looking good. Inflation is low. Unemployment is the lowest it's been in 60 years. Inflation adjusted wages have grown so much that it's wiped out 25% of income inequality in the last year. That's gangster shit. So feeling good. I feel good.
Wonderful. Well, good. All right. I'm doing fine. I'm doing just fine.
No one asked you, Sam. No one asked.
Nobody cares. As usual, nobody gives a shit.
Why just fine?
It's just because inflation can come down if you want, but we're all in the. I feel today as we're recording, I am at the foothills of the Alps. We've got this big conference coming up. I hope all you guys are coming in Nashville. We haven't sold, we sold some tickets, but we need to sell more tickets. It's a big nut. We need to sell more sponsorships. Yeah. We just need the groundswell. There's a lot of people that know about the conference, but we need these people to come to the conference. So, it's wartime. It's wartime every day. Trying to figure out the best path.
How can you say no to Nashville? Like Nashville will be such a fun city.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. And you really got to bring your team. The whole point of it is like, we're going to be doing these company-wide workshops. Like AJ, bring Graham, what's the wonderful CMO's name? Sarah, bring Sarah. Like it's about aligning the revenue organization. So anyway, we've got a guest. It's somebody that AJ and I both know. I'll read a quick intro. Well, I'll welcome him in, and then I'll read the introduction. So it is. Let's see if he shows up. Here we go.
Oh shit!
Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome.
Hi, Chris.
I've got your bio in front of me, Chris. So folks, if you're listening out there and you're not watching the YouTube, it's Kris Rudeegraap, the CEO and founder of Sendoso. Co-founder. I'm going to give you his bio right now. The co-founder and CEO of Sendoso, the leading direct marketing automation platform, more than a decade of go-to-market experience with time at TalkDesk, Yapstone, and Picora. He discovered that creating meaningful engagements through direct mail and gifting was an effective way to drive demand and increase sales. Chris is a California native. All of this led to founding Sendoso. It's trusted by the world's leading businesses, including Fortune 100 and 500 companies, and is an essential part of successful demand gen account-based sales and customer experience programs. Backed by $152 million in venture funding. Chris's email to us indicated that you're over $100 million in ARR. Just crushing it. Kris, welcome to Top Line.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're excited to have you. So for those out there in the world that do not yet know, I mean, I just read a little bit about Sendoso, but give us a little bit of background on who Sendoso is, what Sendoso does, and then we're just going to dive into a conversation about the current state of the state.
Perfect. So at its core, we help companies build better relationships by way of sending stuff to people. Could be a handwritten note, could be a bottle of wine, could be a New York Yankees onesie for a prospect that just had a little baby, or it could be a bottle of champagne. And the goal there is really to just help influence and create better relationships, whether that's through the sales process, through marketing campaigns, through field events, through customer success initiatives, or even internal employee initiatives. And so really we created a marketplace, really infinite curated options of things you could send, a fulfillment network around the globe to help get those things sent, and then a SaaS platform to seamlessly integrate into your tech stack, make it easy to track, et cetera, et cetera.
Chris, you used to have these, I don't know if maybe you still do them, these quizzes in your updates. By the way, Chris sends out the most delightful updates for all you out there. He's like known in the founder world. I don't know if that's true. I think it's true. You're definitely known for like your advisor updates. But you used to have this quiz. And I remember the first one I got was like, what was the first thing that Sendoso ever sent?
Mm-hmm.
Which was?
Yeah, so the first thing we ever sent was socks. Well, I should take a step back.
That wasn't what was in the quiz, though.
No. The first thing we ever sent was coffee gift cards.
Yeah, coffee gift cards. Yeah.
And so that was the very first thing we sent because the company actually got started as a side project called Coffee Sender. And that was kind of our MVP of sending Starbucks gift cards. And I was doing it while I was a sales rep. I built this Coffee Sender product and launched it, and it was doing like almost $1 million in revenue.
Holy shit.
And so I was like, shit, this is more than just a side project. This is real deal, and kind of pivoted into a real business.
Wow.
Let me ask you a question, Chris. So we talk about the market a lot on the show. What's it been like? And this is only speculation, but this is why I was so glad to get your email. And you said, happy to talk about the journey from 0 to 100 million, which is friggin' awesome. How has the economy over the last, 12 to 18 months, I guess, the peak of the market was effectively like November 21, at least in tech, but maybe you're diversified well beyond tech. And so then things have been declining, and they've been really bad this year for most tech businesses. So how have you guys weathered the storm? What have you done? I'm sure you've gotten creative. How are things going at Sendoso? And what's your perspective on the market given everything that's happening?
Yeah, so I think a couple different ways to take that. One is, because of what we do, we have a very, what I would call vertical and horizontal business. We could sell to a lot of different industries. For example, aside from just tech, we have big hotel chains using it for loyalty to their top members. We have sports teams using it to send out to their season ticket holders. We have banks using it for some of their clients. And we have manufacturing companies using it for engaging their employees. And then we also across a lot of different departments. So while maybe sales and marketing pipeline could be hurting for a B2B tech company, maybe their HR team is picking up spend to really engage their employees through a tough downturn time. And so because we sell to sales, marketing, CX, HR, it allows us to diversify a bit. That being said, we weren't like, 200% growth through, the downturn last year. We definitely took a hit, and we also saw a lot of tech companies downsize from some of the SaaS spend, but we saw increases in what we call account balance spend, or GMV revenue, that while a company might have said, hey, instead of having 300 licenses for a sales team, we actually now only have 200, but the previous year we spent $800,000 with you. This year we're going to spend 1.8 million. So they might increase spend while decreasing users, which wasn't that uncommon. We also saw events come back in fashion last year and this year. And so we do a lot for setting out booths and event swag and event fulfillment. And so that kind of skyrocketed back for us too. But in general, I think while the stock market last year was doing pretty bad, I think the first 6 months of this year, stock market's kind of back. albeit the private tech SaaS multiples and tech companies are not necessarily back in action. But, it seems like there's a lot of, the Fortune 1000 out there that have kind of came back in fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the stock market's like the leading indicator of the economy. So the stock market was down last year, presaging a difficult actual economic environment for a lot of people this year. Stock market's back this year, presaging hopefully an improved economy next year, which I guess is, all of our goals. What were you going to say, Austin?
I was going to ask, you've got quite a lot of diversification in terms of the types of companies that you work with, which has obviously probably been quite helpful in this market. In your journey from 0 to 100 million, when did you start diversifying? Like, can you speak to how that evolved? Who did you start selling into? And then when did you start going after other sectors?
For sure. And I will clarify one point that you said in ARR. It's reoccurring, but it's not all SaaS ARR. Some of that is spend revenue on our platform.
I wouldn't have clarified that. We don't.
It's still gangster.
This is not.
We're
still very cool.
We're not Ernst & Young here. Nobody gives a shit. Just take
Sam has a spreadsheet with 500 KPIs. 500 KPIs.
Yeah.
You add up all the rows, I guarantee it's over 100 million.
Oh, well, even last year alone. But so to your question about diversifying, and I think a lot of it actually was inbound, and we actually didn't purposefully diversify for many years away from kind of our core ICP, which was tech. We just were the benefit of, a lot of there's some recipient virality where if our customers are selling into hospitality, there's a good chance that they either got an e-gift that said Sendoso in the footer or an address confirmation during COVID that said confirm your address, and it was coming from Sendoso. So similarly to like when you DocuSign or do a SurveyMonkey survey, there's a bit of product virality that we benefit from.
Yeah. And that's an interesting one because people wouldn't typically think about that. I mean, you think about like Calendly where you kind of opt in, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're opting into it, but not in a way that feels like you're getting sent something. So you're not feeling like it's a terrible way to have it. But yeah, you guys must have like really, really interesting like mailing data. I don't know like if that's productized, but that's just like really, really interesting. And just
something's coming out where we definitely started to productize it more and have seen that it's been more and more of interest for our customers to have a unique mailing address in kind of what we call smart delivery.
So, Kris, like one of the things we also talk about is the market aside. We did this with Mark last week in just the generative AI. I think we both know that he's spending a lot of time in that space. The LP meeting, I don't know if the West Coast one has happened yet, but on the East Coast, he was very like, that was all he was talking about and all he's spending his time on and writing about. As from a founder who has all of these different channels and inbound, like that feels like something you're spending some time probably with as well. But like, what parts of your business are you thinking about it? And like, is there parts where you're just doing experiments, or no, we're making a hard push ourselves into generative AI?
Yeah, for sure. And just for the audience, Mark Roberge, one of the founding partners of Stage 2 Capital, who's an investor in Sendoso and many other cool companies, who's also
like QuotaPath.
Yep. And also an awesome revenue leader with a decade of experience at HubSpot, which is, I read his book way back when I was an AE, and it was like a fanboy when I first met Mark. So cool to have him on the cap table. But yeah, to your point, we're experimenting with a few different things. One, we have this pun pal, we call it, because creating puns is a fun way to communicate a gift and a handwritten note and a message and e-gift, and coming up with puns for some sales and marketers is good, but creativity for puns is something that we found ChatGPT could do quite well. And so we have a pun pal feature in our platform that we've been beta testing that takes into account the recipient, the gift, the use case of why they're sending it, and tries to generate a more fun, kind of punny message. And so I think that's something that's interesting that we've been leveraging. We've been we built in a huge data set as it relates to like what's the right thing to send the right person at the right time. And we haven't productized that perfectly yet. We have some human in the loop data there where we will suggest things based on recipients' interests, based on their tweets, based on their alma mater. And so we have a productized version to get gift suggestions, but it's not fully AI baked in. We launched it about a year ago, and there's still some humans behind the scenes there. But with all the advancements in AI, that feature is getting a lot better. It was maybe ahead of its time, I think. But now kind of technology is catching up to it. So those are kind of, I think, suggestions and recommendation engines, and writing emails or writing messages is kind of the two areas that we're banking on.
There's something that you'd mentioned that has been top of mind for you, and I think it connects to this AI discussion a little bit. So the premise of AI is it can help you create new things to take to market, but there's also an implication for your organization and how you use it to run your business, right? Mm-hmm. Like if it is an amplification tool, it can make people faster and better at what they do, and is already doing that 30, 50% in certain functions like engineering, then it could impact how we design our companies moving forward. And so at the same time, we've gone through this downturn where there's been this shift towards efficiency, the year of efficiency from Zuckerberg, and then every investor on every cap table is saying something that I think annoys you a lot, which is do more with less, right? And so tell us a little bit about the first part of the question, how you're thinking about leveraging artificial intelligence in your organization in terms of how you run it. Where do you think it works? Where do you think it's going to take some time for us to get products that are viable? And then second, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this do more with less thing.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about the efficiencies that AI will bring. I think we're still in the first inning of a ball game where we just don't know how some of these companies are going to unfold. I think a lot of companies are adding AI into their platforms, but is it real AI, or is it just a term to drive some catchiness with some PR and some news? I'd say a tactical example of how, our sales and account management team is using like Google Bard specifically for a lot of our public enterprise companies. A great use case is leveraging that to pull out highlights from 10Ks and 10Qs. So we have, about half our customer base and a bunch of our target prospects are public companies. And rather than having to previously, like when I was in sales, I'd have to kind of look through 130-page 10Qs to try to get some insights. Now with, one or two prompts, you can get really specific examples of priorities for the business or how much they're spending in certain areas. And so we did a sales enablement and customer success and enablement where we shared 15 prompts for Google Bard, and specifically chose Google Bard because of the recency of up-to-date data versus, while ChatGPT is up to date with 2021 and plugins thereafter, we just went all in on Bard for the recency data. So that was an area where
ChatGPT just took out the web plugin for some reason as well. So now Bard has a huge edge on it. Agreed.
Yeah, and for us, the recency data is all that matters when you're looking at a 10Q that was launched or released a week ago. You need that relevancy. So that's a very tactical way that we said, hey, summarization of 140-page docs, pulling out 5 trends here, or spend on a direct mail here. Those things would have taken us either hours, or we would have never done because it's too low on the to-do list, to things that take minutes. So I think that's really interesting.
Do you think that has an implication on quota setting? Let's say next year, we start the year, the economy feels better, you're setting targets for your team. Are we there yet where you say, okay, now that this task that used to take 3 hours takes 5 minutes, it changes the productivity potential of a person, and so the quota should be higher? Or do you think we're a little bit far away from that?
I think we're still far away from that. And I think it'll be interesting to see as productivity is real, how you can measure productivity in a way that allows you to increase quotas in a fair way without feeling unfair to the reps. I think certain reps have been more productive over the years and are rewarded with their productivity by hitting accelerators faster. I mean, when I was in sales, I would have a team I would have an Upwork team in India doing things while I slept, like enriching contact data or, going out and building out, lead lists for me.
Oh,
and
cool.
it was
You
super productive.
you use those like they were your own Upwork people?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gangster.
That's so smart. I can
Yeah.
see why you're a successful CEO.
I actually, it's one of the areas I train my team now, and I've probably spent $500,000 on Upwork over the last decade, and I really try to empower my team to use Upwork whenever possible. I think it's a critical skill to be able to go to Upwork and in 10 minutes put a job in, and 20 minutes have people that responded, and in an hour have something done. It's another super small example, but when we were just getting started, we had Zendesk, but we didn't have a Zendesk guru, and we needed to create reports, and we needed to create some automations. Rather than having a support person who was spending days figuring out the intricacies, I just posted something on there. An hour later, I had people respond, and then like a couple hours after that, boom, we had exactly what we needed with a learning opportunity for our support manager, but not hours of wasted time. So I think using Upwork across the organization, especially if you're a small company, is like an efficiency hack.
That's so interesting. I've never the way you put it was like it was a critical part of the business. Was it a part of like your interview process? Did you do like case studies of like, okay, got to go use Upwork to do this thing? Like, was that?
I not necessarily interview process, but I would highly educate and influence individuals joining the company to use it, because I think it's a bit out of people's comfort zone. Like, oh, what is this? I don't want to get some like, why do I need this? But when you break it down to a single task you're trying to do that could take you hours to learn and figure out versus minutes, it really unlocks an aha moment. Especially even if you're onboarding new software or you have questions about new tech stacks that you're using, you can go, I was advising another CEO who was rolling out customer.io, and they had some questions. I was like, post on Upwork, you'll get an expert, you'll pay him $60 an hour, you'll spend 2 hours, and that will save you 3 weeks of watching videos to try to learn, and you can go figure out what they built and then kind of reverse engineer learn.
Genius.
So smart.
What are you, Kris, I know you as through Pavilion, you've done a few teaching courses for CEOs on building out this advisory network. And you've got like one of the largest advisory communities that I know of. AJ's a member of it. I don't think I've gotten my invite. I think got lost in the mail. I keep going to the mailbox.
I think we'll get it after this.
My question is, but it's less about that, which I think is super interesting, but it's more, you must talk to tons and tons of CEOs. What are you hearing? How are people doing? What do you see them struggling with? And what you mentioned that you were advising another CEO. What's sort of like the most salient advice that you find yourself giving to companies and founders that are not in exactly the same position that Sendoso may be in? Maybe they're highly concentrated in tech. Maybe they are not showing, rule of 40 growth metrics, but they're running out of money and need to raise. Like, what advice do you give people when people are going through the shit?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you touched on my advisor program, and I think, it's kind of a meta answer, but I really try to teach other CEOs how to build advisor communities early on in their cycle, to start that from day one and do it the correct way versus learning by failure and making a few advisors super high percentage owners on the cap table versus maybe a larger micro advisor strategy, which I have. So, meta answers, I like to share that. I think there's lots of other learnings to, our stage company in terms of how we've evolved through industry expansion, through ICPs, through hiring the right people at the right times, through your leadership team, that are useful for kind of Series B and C stage companies. I think for earlier stage, like for more of the companies I invested in, kind of the seed or A stage, it's all about driving customers, talking to customers. It's never too early. Even for some of these pre-launch companies, I really talk to them about going out and how to find customers day zero. And I think that's, for CEOs that are, at Series C or bigger, I think finding and talking to customers is still critical. I still do a fair amount of prospecting myself. I do a ton of exec level kind of warm intros. Also leverage my advisor community for that. I'm on a CEO roadshow right now where I'm meeting about 100 customers in 100 days. Last year I met with about 300 of our customers. So I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, have you created basically the Upwork for founders or for advisors? You created like a legit Upwork yourself.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, I hadn't thought about it like that, but you're correct in that I often go to my advisor group and ask for expertise in areas that I probably would have had to go to Upwork for if not. So, I think maybe subliminally I kind of did that.
There was something you shared when you were doing that advisory session for the CEO Pavilion, showing us how you did it. One of the things that was shocking was you didn't leverage recruiters till really far into your journey because your advisory network was basically helping you with all your key recruitment, right? Like, I think it was like till 150 people or something like that, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, so it was a mixture of and you're correct, 150 people is when we hired our first recruiter, and it was partly contributed to our advisory group, which were extremely helpful with some of those exec level hires. Like our CRO came from our advisor group, and others came, high level came from warm intro recruiting. And then at the same time, I used my kind of sales / SDR / growth hacking background and skill set to build out kind of a similar type of engine for recruiting, and really treated it as like, okay, how do I build a list of candidates? How do I get their contact information? How do I then, mail merge them or add them to sequences? And so I was able to be like, 5 sourcers in one myself, and then was able to build a strong mechanism for how I then, do interviews and get people through the funnel, where I was kind of the hiring manager / recruiter / my quote unquote, like, robots behind the scenes were doing the heavy work of what
I love that.
sourcers.
Let's see, why wasn't anyone impressed that from a session 2 years ago, I remembered a number so precisely? Come on, guys, 1 second.
You do it every week. Austin, that's your
holy
role.
shit. Like, that session was 2 years ago.
Listen, also, no one fact checks you on these things. So like,
that's like the best part of data. So, Kris, it seems like a lot of what you do is doing more with less. So why do you hate that statement?
Yeah. So,
I love that question.
Yeah, Kris, what's your problem, dude?
What's up with that?
Dang, I'll beat up on Kris episode. So the way that I think about that is, I'll take it in 2 different ways. One is I think it's important to have people, what I would say, do less better. And I think that's the big difference to that expression. I think do more with less really can constitute being okay at a lot of things versus being really, really good at a few things. And so that's just kind of how I like to kind of morph that expression and have my team not think that they have to do a lot more with less resources, but instead hone in on the things that are really going to move the needle, really prioritizing things, and really doing less things better.
Kris, when was Sendoso founded?
2017.
2017. Wow. You're coming up on year 8 for you?
Sounds like right math. Yeah.
Sounds right with math. I appreciate your like energy and enthusiasm, because like 8 years in, we know.
I don't understand how 8 plus 2017. Do I not? Isn't that 2025?
Okay. Yeah, that's why
coming up on.
I hope none of your investors are listening to this math.
This is why you get the. This is why you get those text messages, AJ.
I am the opposite of Austin. I do not I make up shit all the time on these things, and then I get called out on it. Okay, coming up on 6.5 years.
There you go.
Still coming up on 8. Still coming up on 10 years.
Yeah, you're coming up on 50 years one day.
Exactly.
I've been 100 years in business.
Okay. So. I was 2018. Sam, you were 2017, 2018.
I'd say I started working on it full time in December 2018. So I've been doing it 5.5 years.
5.5 years. Austin's I don't know.
They started it in 2007, but I joined in 12 and took over in 20.
20. Okay, so you're the newbie and the CEO bucket.
I'm the newbie.
So get out of here.
But somebody handed me their business.
There's this like known stat that 90% of CEOs don't like founder CEOs don't make it to 5 years, right? Like, and here we are, 5 years. So it almost feels like that 7-year itch with marriages potentially.
Yeah.
I was going to comment on, I see your enthusiasm and energy. It doesn't feel like you're slowing down in that at all. And you're not even thinking about it. You're like taking this to the moon kind of
Exactly.
feeling. Is that the right feeling that you have?
Yeah. I mean, I'm invigorated by every day. Like, there's no, whatever Sunday scaries. It's like, I can't wait to wake up on Monday early to get to work. And I think it's a combination of just, every day, every year, every month, every quarter is dynamic and different, I think. And so there's lots of learnings to be had. It's not like there's nothing boring about it. So I'm constantly learning, constantly hiring new people, meeting new smart people that are way smarter than me that I can learn from, delegating things that I don't like to do. So I'm just doing the things I love to do. And I think we're still in the infamousy of our category where there's still lots and lots of thought leadership and education. I was in Europe a couple of weeks ago speaking as a keynote for a conference in Paris, which was my first international session on the topic. And so there's still a lot of, first times for me. And so
how do you organize your day? Tell me about your day. Are you, because what I sense from you, I just sense that you're more productive than me. I feel like we might work the same number of hours, but I feel like you are playing a lot less online chess than I'm playing.
Well, he's doing less better. That's what he's doing.
Got a lot of Upworkers working while.
I need Upworkers to play my chess for me.
Yes, exactly. So I'm like a work smarter and not work longer type of person. So my calendar is kind of an 8 to 5 calendar with no.
8 to 5's good. That's intense.
So don't really focus outside of those hours. So I'm not like a 17-hour a day worker. That was since day one too. That was purposeful.
What?
So I, even when we were a few of us, it was still a very purposeful, 8 to 5. I've also traveled to 40 countries for fun in the last 5 years since starting the company. So I vacation more than probably all three of you combined, if I'm hypothesizing, or should I say most founders. Maybe I think AJ gets around. He's looks like a well-traveled person.
That's the only compliment that I'm getting on this.
Asa does not get around. He stays exactly in that chair.
But for my goal is, I've experienced it from some other founders and heard just burnouts where you can burn out, which this is a marathon, not a sprint. I've also was a part of a startup maybe 10 years ago where I worked from 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. As an early employee, and the startup didn't exit and didn't go anywhere, and my equity was worthless. So it was like slightly learning from that. And then, really just wanting to think about how can I focus my time more effectively than just longer. And so all that plays into my calendar. I'm a huge calendar time boxer. So almost my entire day is boxed out outside of leaving, maybe 2 30-minute slots open for Calendly invites when I share my Calendly link out. I surprisingly barely use my EA for my calendar. I love controlling my own calendar. I really only CC my EA when it's in a meeting that I know is going to have multiple people on and back and forths, and I don't want to do the math. But if it's a single meeting, I'll book that myself with a single person. And it's a mixture of what I need to get done. So I have an exhaustive Asana board, and I'll just block off Asana time, a bunch of one-on-one skip levels, and then a mixture of external facing, podcasts. Well, Chris,
I think you're not giving yourself credit, because I when I read the updates, it seems like you spend a lot of time with your customers.
Yes.
Which I think is something that people talk about. Founders know to do that, but how to do it. And I think you've kind of cracked that. It seems like, at least from what I can tell. Is that something that you were pretty intentional from day one, or something that you've learned over time?
Very intentional. And I think, again, it comes from my background of sales, and that I love doing demos. I love being on calls with customers. I love flying and meeting customers. And so I spent a decade doing that. And so I was like, I know how to do that really well. Let me keep doing that. And that works really well with customers too, and not just prospects, because you're still always selling your customers something new or just continuing to sell the dream on why to use you more. And so, aside from my once a year kind of 2-3 month roadshow that's purposefully built with a roadmap and updates and vision and, maybe 50 slides that I run through, I will always be on the lookout for intros from prospects and customers, or just, zooming through LinkedIn when I'm, looking at my computer and saying, hey, let's meet, and jumping on calls. And I also like to, run the gambit. I had someone reach out to me recently who was an AE who wanted to jump on a call earlier this week, actually on Monday. And I was like, yeah, let's jump on a call. I'm curious what's on your mind right now. And I think it gives me, a better sense of the entire world than just talking to other C-levels.
Fascinating. Kris, it seems like this, spending so much time with the customers is something that was relatively easy for you to framework in because of your sales background. Before we become CEOs, we have these spots and they create strengths for us when we become CEOs. But then we also have some blind spots, some areas we have to develop. Like for you, when you decided to start the business and in those early years, what were some of the blind spots or skills that you had to develop that were tricky but necessary?
Yeah. So, I think, the biggest thing I would say for that is I just quickly hired people that were smarter than me in those blind spots. So they weren't blind spots for me anymore. They were someone else's problem. And so I hired in the early years, some of my blind spots were like, I'm not a rock star CFO. I don't love legal. I'm not an HR document wizard. And there's a lot of things on that side of the house that I just was not incredibly interested in learning or skilled at from past years. And so when we were maybe a dozen people, I hired a pretty senior COO, which I think at the time she was getting paid maybe 3 times as much as I was even paying myself, but was a godsend for the business and took a lot of heavy lifting off my plate that was going to which was going to take a lot of time for me to actually learn and then do them correctly. And instead, it was more of a 1-hour check-in call to hear how all those things were going and sleeping well at night that I could focus on other areas. And so, I think the lesson learned there for me is, if they're an expensive hire early on, if they can, make you focus on the things you're good at or you want to do, it's worth it. And that was really helpful for some of my blind spots.
Coming up on the end of our time together. I love that phrase, by the way. I always say that. But when you think of your darkest days, what did you learn from them? When were they? How did you get out of it? Or has it just been smooth sailing the whole time? It's just been, 8 to 5 time box, look at my Asana board, go on my roadshow, everything goes up into the right.
Yeah. No, there's definitely dark days. If I were to think about one of the lowlights, like a lot of other companies last year, we did have to do a layoff and shed some employees with just in a board that was very focused on, as the herd mentality with all other boards, on cutting costs to get to profitability quicker. Given the stage we are at, we were on a path to IPO and was at had just raised $100 million from SoftBank, and so it was pretty tricky in terms of sharing with employees why we took $100 million to grow the company crazy fast. And with SoftBank money, it was really the strategy was can you burn that money as quick as possible, or how do you hire way ahead of schedule? And a lot of employees didn't understand what hiring ahead of schedule meant, and so there was a lot of education, and then some morale hits based on that, and so that was pretty sucky. I love the people that we hire, and we hire them for a reason, and having to part ways with people just because was not ideal. I think we're today a better company and a great place, but last year was pretty dark when we had to do that. It was not a good time.
Yeah, I think, I know that me and AJ, I don't know if Asid, if you've done any kind of layoffs, but you run it pretty lean. But it's hard after a layoff, and the thing that's hard is that you plan it for way longer than the
Yes.
people that are impacted. And so you're
Mhm.
past it emotionally and mentally by the time that the day comes.
Oh.
Whereas the rest of the company, even, there's all the survivor trauma and survivor bias where they're all worried, they're all wondering, why did I not get fired?
Mhm.
And getting people, even if the company is in strong footing after that, getting people re-engaged after that is really difficult, particularly with, this generation of workers.
Yeah. And then it compounds with remote employees as well, which I think
Are you guys fully remote?
we're kind of in a hybrid. So we have 3 office spaces in San Francisco, Scottsdale, and Ireland, Dublin. But not everyone goes in all the time, and still probably a quarter of our company is not located near an office either. So kind of a flex hybrid environment.
Gotcha. Last thoughts. What do you think? What's your outlook for 2024? How are you feeling about the economy? How are you feeling about the market? How are you feeling about Sendoso? Will we get to buy shares in a public Sendoso company at some point in the next couple of years?
So I'm feeling bullish. I think there's a lot of, a lot has happened in the last year. And I think, as you alluded to, a stock market being a leading indicator and other trends there. And I think a lot of companies are more smartly spending money and smartly growing than before. So we're going to hopefully see a return back to, maybe not the 2021 days, but hey, I was super happy in 2018 and 2019 and 2020. So if we have more of those days, I'm all for it. So
2020? Really?
Well, we actually excelled through COVID. So there was
oh my God, that must have been like one of the great COVID booms with Sendoso, I imagine.
It definitely,
there were so many swag companies.
There's definitely some, personal scares of like wiping down boxes with, paper towels and freaking out that I was going to die. But from a business perspective, there was a lot of momentum through the COVID times. So I think I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the years to come, and I'm hoping one day we'll be cheersing at the stock exchange.
Awesome. Kris, thanks so much for being our guest on Top Line. And if folks, if just go to sendoso.com if they want to learn more.
Yeah, or add me on LinkedIn. I love having conversations too. Or you email me directly.
Or put an Upwork job to get in touch with Kris.
Exactly. Reply to my Upwork.
Great stuff. Great seeing you, man. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Kris. That was great.
Yeah.
Well, another great interview in the books.
There we go.
Yeah, it was some good tactical stuff.
The Upwork stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
I meet these organized people. And I'm sure Asad, first, I just feel, yes, you are.
No.
You're a martial artist.
I'm I think part of the reason why I have to work so many hours is because I'm not as productive as somebody like Kris. Like I've tried this time blocking thing. I'm like, I'll put 30 minutes to do something, and then my brain's in another spot. Like, it's very hard for me to be as on top of things as people like Kris.
I just want to be on top of things the way he's on top of things. He's, he reminds me of Max Altshuler, where they're just there. And I mean this in a positive way, in a complimentary way. So when you're listening, but they're hackers, they're hackers. They're like, oh, you're going to take 5 steps to do that. I'm going to take 2 seconds, maybe 30 seconds to think about it. Oh yeah, I'm going to do it a different way. It's going to be way quicker and it'll be super cheap. And like the whole Upwork thing, when he's, because there's so many employees right now that they will not spend a fucking dollar of their own money at any, for any kind of investment in themselves. They're like, well, I'll get a coach if you're paying for it. And they don't. And meanwhile, Kris as an AE is like, got Upwork people running in the background as he sleeps. He's like, no, that's a percent of my commission. I'm going to make more commission. So I'm going to take a percent. Anyway,
let me tell you
guys, my brain worked like that a little bit.
I did something when I joined STA. If anyone from STA is listening, you're not allowed to do this. Please don't do this. But they were like, oh, you have to go do sales to bring in projects. And I was like, okay, like, how can I hack this thing a bit? So I created a landing page for a URL that was similar to sales talent agencies. And I threw an ad spend there that created inbound leads that came directly to me. And it worked for like a couple of months. I started getting leads from it. I was fucking great. Like, I was like, guys, I have so much business. Who wants to work?
You were like the banner when somebody searched for sales talent agency. Oh my God. You're competing with yourself.
Their inbound leads went down. Mine went up. It was amazing. And then somebody had a talk with me and I had to take it down. Yeah.
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I think so too.
Should we do wins of the week?
Yeah.
For the week. I started last time, so Asad,
I'll go. I was thinking about the market a lot this morning, Chris. I saw the inflation reading. I think I've just found Jerome Powell to be an inspiring guy. Like, I'm inspired by how he has been over the last couple of years, because I think it's a really difficult job to be tasked with bringing inflation down. And the only way to do it is to cause pain in the market and pain in people's lives. And you are the person that they speak about in the news more than anyone else. And they will question your judgments and say all these things about you. And you have to have conviction and stay on track. And he's had that. And at the end of the day, he's done something that in history has never been done in the US before, which is to manufacture a soft landing with a reactive monetary policy. So I'm inspired by the journey this guy's gone down.
And the amount of shit that people gave him was absolutely wild. And he's a fucking idiot and he doesn't know what he's doing. And I mean, even people, I have like a private WhatsApp group with like old college friends. And, you know, this guy's like, Jerome Powell doesn't understand shit. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. It's like, I don't know. It seems like he may know what he's doing. Yeah, I think that's a great shout out.
Yeah.
AJ, how about you?
I'm sure he's listening and very happy that I shouted him out.
I'm going to give a shout out, probably someone I have. Maybe I haven't. I'm going to give it to my wife this week.
You've given it to her before.
The only reason I'm giving her this one is because I have a board meeting next week, have a shit ton of things that are going on, and spouses of startup founders like take the brunt of everything and all the things.
So true.
And so like she deserves the double shout out because this week in particular has been a little tough. She's like, hey, AJ, you're going to take a personal day today. So tonight I'm going to go get a nice steak and have a glass of wine and
what
journal.
Time? What time are you going to go?
You're going to join me? You're going to come down?
I'm going to do it like at the same time in a different part of the country, but we're going to like mentally.
7 p.m.
All right.
Be there, and I'm going to do a little journaling. I think that's part of it. Like just like I have a little journal that I like goals and just track. And this year has been one of those years where things have gotten like off track for me personally in some ways. And so I'm going to sit down and spend some time thinking about the world. So it's going to be great. Sam, I'll send you a text during that time. You might not have your phone. I'm not sure I'll have my phone with me.
Well, 7 p.m. You know, there's plenty of places to eat steak in Sag Harbor, and I think that might make. Tonight was going to be a cooking night. I was going to make myself brats and a salad and some rice, but I can do that tomorrow night. I don't need to do that tonight.
Well, 7 p.m. a bit early for dinner.
Oh, are you kidding? Austin, that's late.
That's late.
I ate by
8:30, buddy.
Yeah,
I had dinner at like 10:45 last night. Like the sun is out at 7.
I can't with the late dinner people. I cannot with the Europeans.
I can't eat dinner when the sun is still shining. It's wild.
Yes, you can. It's fine.
Awesome.
Think about if you lived in Norway.
We had dinner in Miami. It was like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I was exhausted. I don't know. You were like energized, but of course you got up at like 11 a.m. today. So whatever. I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna give a couple shout outs just to some Pavilion members. I got the following message. It just makes me feel good. Okay. So first, Steve Timperley from Kansas City said this: Sam, just thought I'd reach out to share some personal appreciation for what you built here at Pavilion. I have not been nearly as active as I'd like, but I've always been impressed and the value that's there for the taking. I posted a position for a buddy of mine who finished his seed round and looking for that critical first sales role, an insanely difficult role to fill. I thought I'd see if there's any interest amongst the Pavilion community. Holy cow. I have 22 strong candidates in less than 24 hours, several with exactly the kind of experience he needs. Brilliant work in building what you have here. Just huge value in this community. So Steve, thank you so much. Steve's also about to move into a CEO role. We hope to get him into the CEO community. I want to give a shout out to Jim sauce. Jim is a CRO in San Francisco, who also sort of came to me and said, I've been a CRO at all these companies. I've had 3 exits. We sold to this company and that company. I've been a member for a long time, but I haven't been super engaged and active. And now I'm just I'm like in a hiatus because I left my old role, and I'm just dedicating time to be more active and involved in Pavilion. And I love what you built, and I love the community. And I just, it's really cool to have those kinds of conversations with people, where the best kind of conversation is when somebody's like, yeah, I'm not a daily user. It's not my toothbrush or my toothpaste, but I recognize the value. I recognize the need. The last conversation is with this guy who loves us, so he deserves a shout out. Mike Fitch. Mike is at Dandy. Dandy is a really interesting company because they sell a SaaS solution, but it's actually like a quasi equipment financing company, which is basically, buy the SaaS solution. We're going to give you this dental imaging machine they sell to dentists. Normally the machine costs X. We include it with the subscription. You just have to keep renewing the subscription in order to keep the machine, which again is effectively a form of like financing or arbitrage. But they're into the whatever past 100 million is, however many digits that is, 9 figures in revenue. And and he's been a member for a long time too. And he lives in Morristown, New Jersey. He's like, I haven't been as involved because I'm focused so much on the work, but now I want to get more involved in the community. We're going to get him active and engaged. He's been taking a lot of courses and content. So it's just, to the point of Kris talking to your customers. Those are conversations that give me energy in life. So that's my shout out.
I love that the guy from Kansas said, "Holy cow," wrote it. That's the best thing. I love it.
Austin, are you ready to get a selfie from Sam and I tonight as we eat our steak at 7 p.m.? You're gonna,
guys, with the sun shining for both of you, I look forward to it.
It was great seeing you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. This has been another episode of Top Line. Signing off is me, Sam Jacobs, CEO Pavilion. AJ Bruno, CEO QuotaPath, Asad Zaman, CEO Sales Talent Agency. Next Wednesday at this time, I will be in Boulder, Colorado, talking to a group of Insight CEOs, but I still can record. So see everybody next week. Thanks for listening. This episode of Top Line was brought to you by Contract Book. Contract Book's holistic contract management platform allows businesses to scale with accessible, actionable, future-proof contracts. Step into the new era at contractbook.com and take control of your contracts for good.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Top Line. To learn more about the trends, news, and developments impacting the world of B2B SaaS, head to joinpavilion.com, where more than 10,000 of the world's top go-to market leaders go to achieve and unlock their full professional potential.